The winter was harsh this year. As I tread across the drifts of nearly man-deep snow, I wondered how much this would slow the caravans, and the potential problems that would be caused by that. The goods carried by the caravans of the halflings and gnomes were essential for many of the hamlets and villages scattered across the plains and woods of this continent. However, the people of Jamamara as a whole were very unlikely to be too hampered by something as minor as weeks of harsh storms. My people had gotten that part of our duties to them right at least. Walking on the surface of the pristine powder, I could feel the land beneath the half-dozen feet of snow, slowly thrumming with the slowly building energies that would burst forth in the spring in grasses and flowers. Looking up, I saw the answer to my musings, as a low-flying convoy of sky ships, alight with the telltale sounds of gnomish music and halfling shanties, drifted by. If you can't go through, go over. I smiled. The younger races were never kept down for long. They always find a way, don't they? I turned to look, and sitting on top of a signpost, swinging his bare legs and staring up at a skyship, was a small elven child, wearing a set of deep purple robes. He turned to me. How you doing, Lord Alone? Formal. This couldn't be a good sign. This child was many things, but formal was rarely one of them. I cast my senses around in a few hundred yards in all directions, just in case his partner in crime was about to execute one of their legendary and masterful pranks. She's not where this meeting, Lord Alon. You are being called. For the briefest of moments in my shock, I sank nearly an inch into the snow. The universe calls for me? I returned myself back to the snowy surface. He did the worst thing he could possibly have done then. He laughed. No, Lord Alon, the universe does not call for you, Analar. The revered do. And with a flash of a wicked smile, his eyes ebbed, brightened, and the world around me shifted. Hours later, the world shifted again, and I was again staring at the child, whose eyes were still dimming. Interesting. Whatever they wanted with you, it must be important, especially if they sent you back to when you left. He left the question hanging. The revered are considerate of the time of others. If he didn't know, I really wasn't at liberty to fulfill his curiosity. Just then, the wind started to pick up coming from the mountains, causing the snow to start trailing off the tops of the drift in long lines. A lone, long crack of thunder resounded. He looked past me to the unseen mountains. Another bad storm coming. He hopped up, with his feet balanced on the road sign, tapping with one. Wywood's only 100 miles off. It'd be best if you were there before the storm catches you. With a tailwind, you could easily make it, even if you don't cheat. Childish teasing was very clear in his voice. May I remind you, young man, I am a firstborn transcendent Analar, wielder of the flame and a master of the true fist. Why would I need to outrun a storm? I realized I was staring down at him. I had expanded back to my full 15-foot height, towering over the little one. He only looked up at me and smiled, fading away with only 5 words left hanging in the air. Because I told you to. With that, like a balloon pierced, I deflated back down to my preferred 7.5-foot height. Now alone, I went to cast my senses onto the coming storm, and as the wind continued to pick up, I stopped. His advice rarely was what it appeared, and I would bet an awnie his advice had nothing to do with the dangers of the coming storm, whatever they may be. So, I spread my wings and let the rising wind take me into the air. At this speed, I figured I'd beat the storm there by at least 2 hours. I hoped Wywood's Tavern had its signature roast tonight. Now, it was something I was looking forward to. I had work to do. By the 9 and 4, welcome to the library. Today we're going to take our explorations and zoom in a bit on a minor, sleepy little city, that of Wywood. As always, my perceptive patrons, this is only an introduction to this tiny little town. As noted in a previous entry, this little fishing town is located on the western coast of Batonia. It has mountains just a few miles to the north and east, and vast seas to the west. It has a lively fishing economy, which they regularly use to trade with the grand caravans, mostly for foodstuff and other creature comforts, sweets, cuts of rare meat from game across the continent and world, as well as brews for sailor and fishmonger alike. Local mines and forests within the town's general area supply most of the material needed for the local smiths and craftsmen to maintain the ships and other tools needed to keep things going in this town. However, it should be noted that all trade with this village occurs at a trading post some 13 miles away. In fact, very few large groups ever ventured much closer to Wywood, despite the many reasons one might do so. As another aside, not even bandits, monsters, or other ne'er-do-wells seem keen on making a go at pillaging the undefended town, or at least none that have ever told of it. The town itself has never had a recorded attack, from sea, sky, or land in its very long history. The reasons for this are unclear, but does seem to be centered around a series of monuments, placed in rings that center on the town square, and expand to roughly 9 miles from there. The distance between the rings, and even each monument in the ring, seems to be random, but these rings extend even out to the sea along the seabed to the distance of the 9 miles. Further confounding things, these monuments are not magical or technological in any way that has been able to be discerned. They are simply monuments of NLR, which only makes things more confusing. According to the librarians of the Hidden Library of Talion, the capital of the NLR's holdings on Jamamar, there are no records of any NLR recorded placing anything like it or laying any other sorts of protections or wards on the town or area itself. Regardless of this, Wywood is one of the only places on Jamamar that never felt the touch of Anson. With even the elder races confused about the origin of this protection, and if it even is related to these monuments, for they easily could be a distraction from whatever force is so effectively warding Wywood. It is not likely this mystery will be solved anytime soon. Not that it matters overly much to the residents of Wywood. They live their lives and deal with all the issues that their coastal life brings. They trade their produce and trinkets as they have for years uncounted. Wywood is a much simpler and most peaceful slice of the realm, uniquely free from the generally ever-shifting board that is the great game of gods, men, kings, and heroes. They are an example of how even the most assuming places of the realms will still have their mysteries. Mysteries even for those that should be far old enough to know the truth of such things. With this minor look at one of Jamamar's least noted, but more interesting locales over, and before we get back to Lord Alon's visit to the subject of our entry, thank you for your time and attention, my perceptive patrons, and as always, until you once more return to the library, by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves, and each other. Let's get back to it. I landed 20 feet outside the outer ring of monuments. They'd always confused me. but I never dared to risk whatever kept this simple little piece of paradise safe by flying or gracing myself within the rings. As I had done for nearly a decade, many centuries ago, I cast my senses to the monuments, to within them, to around them, to through them, and once more tried to solve the riddle of this place. However, as each and every time I had tried before, there was nothing strange or unusual about the metal that made the monuments. No distortions of temperature or energy, of mass or shape, to hint at the monument being anything but a metal thing.
Tag, what in the dun are you doing here?
I spun, snapped out of the intense focus I had been in. I had not heard anyone approach, but seeing the large Dragwa supremacist with his metal bionic arm, the answer for that was clear. Dressed in a set of simple robes, he looked me in the eye and smiled. Lefty was a humble man, a respected member of the Hunters, and a servant to the greater realms for years uncounted. He was also one of the Celestial Touch, and as such, had many abilities that defied common logic, such as being able to move from one place or another nearby without motion, magic, grace, or the like. He was a friend to all, and a trainer of heroes and gods, though mentioning that last part was a sure way to get him annoyed. Lefty, I was just on a walk from Evelyn. Hell of a winter so far. Looks like another storm incoming. Come on, let's get to the tavern. I can smell roast. Smiling, he joined me and we walked into town. We talked of current times and old adventures, as I had had the honor of working with him more than once before. We reached the tavern, with the storm just beginning to drop its heavy snows. We settled down with large plates of hot roast and tankards of warm, fine drinks, all the better to shake the chill from our bones. As we spoke and ate, joked and drank, I found that he had knowledge of an item of interest to my latest endeavor, a relic of pre-feather and scale providence. This item was something I was thinking to seek out far later on, as it was something very specific and very unlikely to be discoverable via the normal channels. We continued to talk late into the night, about how one would reclaim such an artifact safely and intact, as it was currently part of a collection that was most stringently guarded, and far outside the standard methods of retrieval. It was just before midnight before he and I had come up with a plan, a way to get the artifact back to where it belonged, all while taking care of several other considerations Lefty had about the situation as I had described it. Amazingly, this millennia-old being had an almost childish energy when it came to challenges like this.
I'll have to make a house color too, and this should work. Only downside, time.
He looked at me seriously.
What is our timeline?
Loose. If I am correct, we're still only in the prelude. He looked at me even more seriously, setting his jaw solid.
How bad are we talking?
Can't say. The look I got from him was scathing. No. I am not keeping secrets on this. By the 9 and 4, I swear I am not. However, the true degree of the danger is not clear. Other than, it's enough to warrant us engaging in such actions.
You best hope so, Tag. You are looking at playing with people that do not like to be played with, and some of them can kill even the likes of you, and they can make it stick. Your endless regeneration wouldn't slow them down a heartbeat. You know this. He lifted his tankard, smiling. Tapping mine to his, I replied, I'm aware, but what is worth us being involved in that doesn't come without such risks?